Welcome to the third episode of Around the Block with Circular Protocol. Thank you for joining us around the block. We have some guests here today. You all know Gianluca Donovi, co-founder and CTO of Circular Protocol, but you are now meeting Andrew Hemingway. I'd like you to describe what you do. What brought you here? Not just me driving this morning, but what brought you to this chair?
Yeah, this is quite a story, but we'll skip the long story just to get right to the details. But background in blockchain and building communities online, and of course, just as a human concerned about health and science. And once those worlds started to collide, I saw that there was a great need to start to bring the DeSci community together, and formed the DeSci Alliance. And from there, have just made connections and met Gianluca and learned about Circular, and excited to be here today and talk about that.
How long has that career in blockchain been going on?
Well, it's been a number of years. I was introduced to Bitcoin in 2010, so just after the white paper was released. I was introduced to blockchain technology, ran for governor in New Hampshire on a blockchain Bitcoin platform, and have been working around the industry really since then. Number of large protocols in my background, and a whole bunch of small projects as well.
So the reason why I wanted to get into who you were, I want to set this conversation up because we're talking about DeSci, healthcare. It's a huge, huge industry. Gianluca has lots of experience with that too. Gianluca, could you kind of give an overview of what you're expecting from this conversation with Andrew? What does he bring to your conversation we've been having on this program, and in the kind of the plans for Circular? How does this fit?
I think sometimes I can be very boring because I come from the healthcare industry, and I always have to dissect things in a certain way, which in most cases is very technical. And for me, it's very important to talk with people like Andrew, because they have a way with people, and they are people's people, and they have a language and a way to explain certain things that can reach more people and can really clarify what the culture of the DeSci is and why and what the advantages are. Because it's a new, fresh industry. And it is very important to explain where it's going, what are the values, the principles, the mission, just to make sure we don't remake the same mistakes made over and over with DeFi, for example, where there is a lot of misconceptions. Here we want to try to tell the story naked and raw as it could be, but with very simple language.
Well, that's what this program is. It's joining us around the block. It's casual. We're trying to get inside what brings you guys together. We have a weekly Ask Me Anything, AMA, that we have to talk to our community, to actually have direct contact with them. I think this era is education. As we're building our AI agents that are going to be listening to us, we have to talk about where our brand is, what our goals are. So with that in mind, I want to dig right into the question about just where DeSci, this is back to you, Gianluca, where DeSci needs a layer one blockchain. Where does a layer one fit into that? Because there's a lot of technology out there. Where does a layer one blockchain fit into DeSci?
So technically, for the DeSci in general, decentralized science, for whoever is new to this, you could in general use any layer one blockchain, because you usually use a blockchain layer one for a number of reasons. So what does it mean that you have a project on blockchain? Might mean that you are using a token to finance the project, or might mean that you are actively using the technology to accomplish something. So you build an application on top of that, which might not have anything to do with the token or with tokens in general. So leaving outside all the projects that are simply using a token as a financing instrument for to collect funding, for all the projects that are building technology based on blockchain for a scientific goal, there could be, in some cases, requirement connected to regulation. So if a lot of projects will be, on biology, on healthcare, on this kind of industries, where you cannot use any blockchain Yes, you can use any blockchain in terms of pure technological framework, but you cannot expect institutions that want to use these applications to work on a infrastructure that is not designed to be compliant with regulations.
Right. You say compliance by design is...
That's how I call circular.
So you were saying it's not all about the technology, it's about the community. Where does the DeSci Alliance intersect with these kind of technology requirements?
Yeah, so I need to comment just quickly on this, which is, I think there's your question about the L1, right? And we were just discussing this just previous, but blockchains by nature are public, right? The easiest way to understand what a blockchain is just to describe it as a public ledger. Anything that goes on the blockchain is public. That by its very nature creates tension when you come to healthcare, when you come to proprietary algorithms, when you come to anything that's related to science, right? Everything, right? So there are immense benefits that come from the blockchain, from immutability to decentralization, which can be of great help. But there's also some natural tensions, and I think what Gianluca and what Circular is doing is helping to bridge the gap. And so when some people say, why do we need another L1? Aren't there enough L1s in the world, right? I think that yes, there are a lot of L1s, and I think there are a lot of blockchains that are present today. But what I'm coming to understand and learn about Circular more and more is the DeSci specific nature of the technology. Now, why that's important for me and the DeSci Alliance is because, look, we're a group. I call ourselves the founders, funders, and friends of DeSci, and really we exist to elevate DeSci in its in wherever we can, right? Just like raise the flag, elevate the ecosystem.
Talk to people like us.
Yeah, right, exactly, yeah. And but what you realize is that many of the technology solutions that are present today in the blockchain community in Web3 don't fully understand, right, the depth and technical nature, not technology, but the technical nature of healthcare, right? Yeah. And that's why, when Gianluca and I, we had a spaces together, we had a conversation, and immediately I was like, okay, I'm talking to someone who's not here to pump token price. I'm talking to someone who understands the space, who understands the unique needs of it, has a global, sense of what's happening. And, that's, I think, what was sort of the foundation of our relationship and why, this has sort of continued to move forward. And I'm excited because, I think that the DeSci Alliance is growing very rapidly and represents a broad spectrum of scientists who are coming to the space with all sorts of solutions and trying to discover and trying to learn. How does Web3 play into this?
Is it an association, a membership? Is there a community? How do you engage that community? Is it what's the format?
Yeah, so we're just a community that meets on X.
Okay, cool.
And they have a community portal essentially there. We meet there. We share content, we share updates, things like that. What's interesting is what I'm finding is that groups that are sharing inside of our community are getting just a huge amount of engagement as opposed to when they're sharing outside of our community. And so like we saw a group this week even just come on, they had hardly any following, hardly any distribution. They start sharing inside of the community. They're growing very rapidly now because of the focused nature of the Alliance, right? It's just, and my idea is just literally, I don't have any sort of like paid membership. We're not getting into all that sort of stuff. It's just literally just, are you interested in seeing DeSci grow? Come join our Alliance. Right. Come support the other people who are in the same path as you are. And together, that's how we're going to grow.
So I'm wondering if something that you would fit into as far as, you're a problem solver, right? You see problems, you solve them. That's ever since I've met you. You're just, where are we getting pizza today? I mean, you're the problem solver guy. What are the main problems that you're seeing, that you're tackling, that might be conversations in DeSci Alliance?
First of all, I didn't know pizza was a part of this conversation. I'm very excited.
Sorry,
now.
I brought it up.
Very excited now. Okay, all right, go ahead.
The idea is that you want to first identify some of the problems, and then you have the another problem that comes out of that, which is how can I now explain broader audience what the impact is if I find a solution to that problem. Because when I say, okay, we can build a blockchain that can be used to certify patient records, you tell this to anyone and say, so what?
Right.
What is the real advantage that brings to me? Well, you say to that person, until now you say that you don't see the advantage, but if I start telling you, you know what, you go to the hospital, they can do something wrong to you, and because of a reputational loss, the hospital might try to hide the mistake unless it's a very tiny thing. And insurance is not going to pay you. So to protect yourself from a malpractice case, which might or might not happen, it's something in case happen. Will you pay $5 more to the hospital to have a certified record instead of a non-certified record? What does it mean, certified? It means that a signature of that record is sitting on a decentralized ledger.
Right.
So you take out of the hands of the hospital the possibility to manipulate the data, to kill responsibilities, to kill liability, or to tell a story that is different from the real story.
Right.
But that's an example. The same is for pharmaceutical company. They come with a vaccine. And now you are all upset because you say, because of this vaccine, people died and blah, blah, blah. So who is right? Because when there are conspiracies in a society...
Blame anybody.
No, when there are conspiracies, when you see that there are a lot of conspiracies, that is just a symptom of one thing, a loss of trust. So how can you bring value in a society where you are losing trust in adding a decentralized component, creating a decentralized tool to get those services?
Takes trust off the table. It's not even an issue.
That's correct. I don't have to trust the pharmaceutical company. The pharmaceutical company from now on will produce vaccines and will sign all the clinical studies on a blockchain. So if someone gets hurt and there is an investigation, they can now manipulate that data to get out of trouble. Well, then you feel more comfortable in that case. That's what we try to do. We try to identify problems and come up with solutions. And the solution just needs to bring value to our society. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. So you have a priority list, in a way, during this DeSci Alliance where there are topics that
Sure.
come up.
Sure.
What do you think the priorities are for that group?
Yeah, well, I mean, the biggest topic, the biggest priority, I guess, as you said, in the alliance, but also I just think in general, is sort of what John Luke is talking about here, is just the loss of trust in institutions.
Right.
And I mean, that was never more prevalent than during this last worldwide epidemic with COVID. I mean, there was a massive loss of trust that occurred in the institutions which people thought were designed or were protecting us. And it doesn't matter, I'm not talking about politics, right? Because I mean that you can come down on either side of the political spectrum. But generally, the public said to the institutions that had been promising to protect them, this isn't working, right? And what I think has happened is people, as the internet has proliferated, as knowledge has proliferated, more and more there's this understanding that what's going on, inside of institutions is maybe biased. Right? There's a lot of decisions that are being made that are affecting public health, that are affecting just individual health, right? That you have to stop to say, like, are these being made because it's the right decision, or is this being made because someone's getting paid, right? Someone's profiting. Now he talks about the chain of using a chain to identify what types of things come into a vaccine, or where even doctors are trained, right? I mean, do you know that the doctor certification on the wall is actually legitimate? Like, do you know that? No, we just see a piece of paper. You just think like it is, right? I, like he's saying, would love to have a way to be able to verify these things. I'd love to be able to verify, the ingredients of the pharmaceuticals that I'm using. And when you stop and think about that, the blockchain enables you to be able to do that. Circular really enables you to be able to do that. And is really, for the first time, a technology platform that starts to contribute to that. And we have been told all our life. And so anyways, back to your question. Those are the things that ultimately are
Right.
driving this.
Right.
I think there's also funding, right? Funding mechanisms
Well, prioritization
within
then,
science.
yeah.
Play a role, but yeah.
I mean, I'm going to add to this, doesn't matter who's right, if the patient or the pharmaceutical company. Let's forget about who's right and who's wrong. Let's not take any part. Can we build a technology that can allow the patient to verify what is being done and the pharmaceutical company to demonstrate what was done, so that we protect both parties? We are not protecting one party. We're building a technology that is offering a paradigm shift so that the patient can have a demonstration that what was done with the right and best intent, not to make money. Yes, there is a component of business, but if we want to work with institutions where there is a clear conflict of interest, like I make more money if my patients are sick, then we need to use and enforce these kind of instruments to make people feel better.
So we're aware of those incentives that are built into it.
That's
well,
correct.
we look. I think that there's no question, right, from a public perspective, that the way that the funding mechanism works. Even just think about bringing a drug to market. Bringing a drug to market, you have to go through many tests, many approvals, all this sort of stuff. And what you learn is that along the way, people are getting paid. Right? The people who make those decisions at some level, at some place, are getting paid by somebody. And so we've heard for decades in general, like how the auto industry always kills the most fuel efficient carburetor, right?
Right, yeah.
Someone comes up with an invention, they pay
Big
them
oil,
off,
big oil.
right?
Yeah.
They kill it, right? This is happening in pharmaceuticals, though. This is happening in medicine, which is that this type of conflict of interest, pay the guy. And what's happened is you have to wonder, did my grandma die because somebody got paid, right? That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Is there actually a cure for cancer that's been discovered that
It behooves the industry to keep it quiet.
absolutely?
Yeah.
That's and I think that this is why you have lost the trust in the industry. This is why DeSci exists,
Right.
and why it's growing.
So let's go back to that word D, right? And this is your mantra. How does decentralization satisfy trust? I mean, this is a very basic thing I'd like you to talk about right now. How does decentralization satisfy this security and privacy, but also these incentives and these agendas?
Well, decentralization is everything. It is the base of this conversation. The science, the technology, but the core value of what we're saying, it's not a technology, it's cultural change. And it is the fact that I want to take some control away and distribute back to the ones who really that control should belong, which is people.
Right.
Before there was no way to do this, then one day a guy called Satoshi Nakamoto explained that this could be done with Bitcoin. And now Bitcoin is amazing. It works fine. I don't want to build another Bitcoin, but I want to build a Bitcoin now for science. And I'm not referring to the token. I mean, the token, we have the token. We don't pump the token. If you want to finance, if you feel that as a individual you want to contribute to the project, please buy some. That fund is going to be used for what we're doing, but it's not to grow the company, it's to grow the network.
Right.
And this is legitimately what we're doing. We've been extremely transparent to each level of this project development. Decentralization is the tool.
Well, if I can add on to that, decentralization also aligns economic interests. So right now, the reason why we have a problem with the system that we do is that economic interests are not aligned. Like the economic interest of the NIH and the economic interest of the public are misaligned. And therefore, you have the director of NIH making millions of dollars being paid by pharmaceutical companies, right? And his brother, and his sister, and his kids, and right, they're all getting rich. And meanwhile, their drugs are getting passed. So when we talk about decentralization, what it is it's the writing of those economic incentives, so that now the public and the technology and the pharmaceutical companies and the healthcare providers all of a sudden now have an economic interest to operate in the right way. And through the power of decentralization and the power of the blockchain, you're able to to change those as they need to be changed, and to write them, and to continuously correct them, and identify when something's been done wrong. Right? There's a stamp for it, and I think that those are the things that that make this idea of decentralization so powerful.
Yeah.
Look, it's very simple. The first people that bought Bitcoins didn't buy the Bitcoins to make money. There was no pump and dump scheme. There was nothing.
Yeah.
The first people that jumped on Bitcoin didn't jump on Bitcoin because they wanted to make money, but they jumped on Bitcoin because they wanted these as a new paradigm for finance.
Yeah.
Then more people jumped on board and they made it true. And now, and I think it's fair, they also got rewarded because they jumped on early, but they didn't come with the intent to make money. And that's what made that use case a noble use case. Can we replicate the same for other industries now?
And what you're doing is building tools in order to do that. Right?
Correct.
That's what's that. Literally, you're a tool maker to pickaxes and shovels to the miners. Right. That's the old metaphor for the internet, and that's what you're doing. Tell us a little bit about Certify and how that fits in as a tool set for these capabilities that we're talking about.
I mean, we are building a network for circular, which, by the way, in this stage is still centralized, and we are now in the process of decentralization. Just today I was showing to Andrew all the different tools we are creating to release the nodes to the public. But after we release the nodes to the public, the network does not belong to the company, does not belong to us. It belongs to the network people, the node operators. Yeah. How does the company make money then? Because if the node operators get paid by the transactions and things, I have to find another way to make money. And the way to make money for me would be building tools that work on circular, but anyone else would be able to do the same. So we will be in competitions. It's okay. Yeah. I have a bit of advantage at the beginning because we are the first ones, but I'm not doing this because I want to make money, just like for Bitcoin. I'm doing this because this is what I want to see coming to life.
I think this is an important piece of the puzzle here for me personally. So I've been in the industry for a long time, like we talked about. I've seen a ton of projects, pump and dump projects, and I've also seen real technology projects. And you have to have a combination of the savviness to understand the market and market timing, and you also have to bring the right product to market at the right time. I think what's interesting about bringing an L1 to market is kind of what you described. You're bringing a tool set. You're bringing a platform. Right. And what I think is going to be interesting about circular is, maybe there's a vision for what are the tools that could be built or what are the things that are going to happen there. But really, once that gets decentralized, once that gets pushed out in the open and there's a permissionless platform there where anyone can come along and leverage what's being built, I'm super excited to see the way that creators come, the things that they build, like things that we can't even comprehend, the way that AI is going to play a role in create an entirely new science platform is going to be so cool.
That's the vision of open source anyway, right? So we can actually put it to the community, which is, again, what you guys are talking about. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about Certify itself as a solution for what we're talking about.
Well, that's just one of the use cases. Like we said, we built the layer 1 blockchains, but we didn't stop there. We started building some of the use cases, some of the applications. And Certify is the first more immediate use case, which is a tool to certify clinical trials. So I want to bring to market a drug or a vaccine or a medical device. I need to run a clinical study to verify that the thesis behind that device or that product is really benefiting the patient. So I need to run a clinical study. In some cases, happens that due to errors in emission of the data, in collection of the data, or because someone has been acting in a malicious way. And even if the data doesn't really support the thesis of the product, someone hands a check, and now that becomes all of a sudden supporting that product. What happens when that product is out and some damages are happening? So there is an investigation usually. So when there is the investigation, the company the first thing the company will do will take that data used for a clinical trial and manipulate the data and try to hide that liability in the best possible way. But if I certify the data through the blockchain using zero knowledge proof, that data becomes immutable. You cannot change that data anymore, and then now you cannot hide the liability. So it's again a tool that regulators can enforce to verify that the study and the results were done in the right way.
So it starts with admitting that there is an imperfect system. I mean, that's a pretty huge thing for people to want to admit, because there's legal implications. Not that you're just getting a wrong bill or some data is missing, but back to your point, it's to our health of our society, and we're building that mission to it.
I don't think that that's a hard admission for people, though. I mean, it's a hard admission for...
Maybe the incumbents are having a hard time with it.
Yeah, of course.
They have in the financial industry, there's cool
they're the
terms
ones
for it.
they're the ones that benefit from it.
Right.
But there's obviously, I think the public sentiment would say that the healthcare system, whether it's here or Canada or Italy or Europe, whatever, the healthcare system that exists today is not adequate and is not supporting. And I would say that unless you're part of an institution and benefiting from it, science as a whole is not working. In fact, actually, one of the biggest challenges, if I can say this, one of the biggest challenges with DeSci is getting scientists to talk about it, because their tenure depends upon their placement within the institution. The institution that they know is not working properly, right? The craft that they came to love and came to work at, because of their ties and because of their financial well-being, right? Everyone in science is tied into that structure,
right?
And that's why it's been able to withstand itself. The second that starts to crumble, right, all of a sudden you're going to see people flee out of that, like maggots out of a broken trash bag.
Rats out of
literally, it's going to they're going to absolutely just start running as soon as that becomes that starts to shake, and that is what I think this whole DeSci movement is about, is starting to shake the foundation of that.
I mean, think about cigarettes. Smoking. There are companies making cigarettes that paid scientists to come up with articles to say that smoke was not hurting people.
Yes.
Now, in the scientific complex, who are the most reputable people? Are the ones that can raise more funds, not the ones that are producing the real results. That's the problem. Where am I coming from? I come from exactly that industry. I've been working, I've been a researcher for a couple of decades, and I come from that game. I've been on the hamster wheel for a while, and I don't want to write a paper because that's for me a way to get funded, and I have to preach, what someone is expecting from me. I want to be free to work on the science that I'm working on and come up with what is.
Yes.
Not saying that that's what happened exactly, but just in case, you want to make sure that that's not the situation you have to be in.
Yeah. One of your points earlier, as far as the topics that you say that come up at the DeSci Alliance, was funding, investment, right? And how does a scientist who doesn't really want to care about that, they just want to do what they want to do, they want to make their career work, they want to help more people, how do you tie those worlds together, where you have people making medical devices, and yes, there's a CEO somewhere who wants to make money with that, but how does these tools allow the scientists themselves to make sure that they are in alliance with these morals and ethics and incentives?
So today, you can tell me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a scientist, so I'm going to speak from a scientist perspective here for a moment. Tell me if I'm wrong, okay? Just hit me on the side of the head. But like you go to college, you get your degree, you work underneath somebody, you work through that process, you get to your PhD, you then get placement inside of some sort of another institution, and if it's a government institution, if it's an educational institution, or if it's a healthcare institution, the lines are very blurry, right? And the good ones get placed in multiples of those, right? And then exactly as Gianluca said, you have to start raising money. So if you have an idea, you say, hey, I wanna explore, this certain thing, and you've got to go find the funding to do it. Funding is the blood that flows through science, that causes science to
Good
come along.
metaphor, by the way.
And yeah, hey, thank you. and when you can stifle that, right, then you stop whatever is happening there. It atrophies and it dies. Okay, and whatever that project is, it goes away. So what I think DeSci is doing, the promise of DeSci is the which we talked about earlier, sort of like the shaking of the institutional structure, and perhaps even the destruction of it. But it's also, what has to come along with that is also a funding mechanism. And this is where what I think sort of the DeFi side of DeSci starts to become interesting, because the funding thing has to play a role in it, because scientists need money to do exploration. And I think what you have to do is you have to go back before these institutions were created to say, how did this happen before? And look, a lot of the way that this happened was you had patrons. Scientists would have patrons, literally from families or from others, who would say, hey, we're interested in exploring this concept. And they would find someone who would run those experiments, and they would help fund them, and maybe even they live in their house and provide for them, and they would come up with these things. Now, obviously, we're not going to go back to that model, but does connecting the public and the public's interest directly to scientists, is there a way to do that? And the answer is yes. Right? This is one of the advantages of crypto here. Suddenly now citizens have the ability to be able to economically incentivize.
There's a mechanism
and
in place
support.
for them to support. What
Absolutely.
they want.
You have all these funding rails that are in place that lie outside of that system. And I don't think you'd have DeSci today if you didn't have DeFi, if you didn't have sort of the payment rails that exist.
Right.
And so now with the ability to be able to raise funds, to be able to pitch and say, hey, I'm going to do this, and there's a community base that's interested in this, and as a community, we can together go to a scientist and fund something. I mean, right now, if you got your bunch of friends together and you guys all said, hey, look, we want to solve Alzheimer's because we've got family members who are dying of Alzheimer's, what would you do? You wouldn't do anything. You wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah.
You couldn't do anything. All you would have to do is say, like, boy, I hope somebody at Harvard someday takes this up.
Right.
I hope somebody brings this up. I hope this happens. But in the back of your head, you're saying, I don't even know if that's even a possibility.
I need to do
How would
more.
you do it? Right. But with DeSci, what you're able to do is you're able to say, you know what? If we're serious about this, let's all put a pool of money together. Right. Let's contact a scientist who, reputable lab, blah, 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 blah.
More accurate data so we can assess better.
And you can say, hey, we're gonna commission you to do this. Can you imagine that? Like, that doesn't exist.
So on the arc story of this conversation starts with safety and risk, right? And it goes into support, community support, and then it goes into innovation, which is in your lap, right? This allows innovation in a way, not just these other things which is what you're here for, I think, as much as anything else. Giving people
this
tools.
is innovation, and I think that DeSci is not only probable, is inevitable. And that's because decentralization is a culture, and it's going to be reflected now all over the place. I mean, look at what is happening in this moment, Robert Kennedy is complaining about the way regulation and the FDA has been working without even deciding saying a word about who I think is right. I think that certain doubts are legit. It's fair to have a doubt, unless you prove me that I should not have this doubt, because all the guardrails are in place. But if we want to work with a system that is based on conflict of interest, I don't think is unreasonable to ask to have a couple of tools to give me more power in validating that you're doing your job in the right way. I think the FDA works for people, works for me, works for everybody. So if I ask them an auditing mechanism to be in place, I don't think it's unreasonable. I am the boss. The people are the boss. So it doesn't matter if Kennedy is a conspiracy theorist or not. It doesn't matter. I think people deserve certain tools in place. So it doesn't matter who's right. Now we have a way. And we've been working very hard at Circular to build a way that is compliant, that has all the different bells and whistles, to offer these tools to the regulators. So now let's just use them.
So do you see this vision or this mindset, even what we were talking about before, as your mission for circular, and how do other layer ones and other companies that are in your ecosystem gather for effect and for force, right? So we're not all competing with each other in this industry, that we can get behind certain, not even standards and regulations, we can go there, but how is this mindset, how are you having conversations with what one person would call them your competitor, but you're saying there's room for more layer ones, they're not competing. Tell us a little bit about where you see the vision of the industry coming together instead of competing, because that's how we're going to get some momentum.
Well, look, first of all, to understand how I got here, how I got into this, you should understand a little bit more where I come from. I come from the south of Italy, in a place that until a few decades ago was almost like a third world place, where there was nothing, and people have been building and have been, trying to add value, etc., etc. My mission as a person is to try to be a businessman, to succeed in my business, but trying to do this, creating an impact. And why is that? Because I hope that that's going to be my legacy. I hope that when one day I will not be around, someone can enjoy a little bit what I did and benefit from that. I think that when you have the skills to do something that can impact more people, you probably should have also a bit of responsibility to try to do so. That's what drives me. I might be wrong, I might be lame, doesn't matter. It's,
what's yours? Right?
Maybe it's an ego thing, I don't know. But I think that I find good to try to do things that can benefit everybody around this world.
Right.
And I'm sure that there are many other people doing exactly the same. So for me, they're not competitors.
But
they are supporters. We're helping each other to do this.
So things like this is one way, right? We're reaching out into different communities so we can say,
come and build on circular.
That's the point.
I give you the layer one so that you don't have to build another layer one. So build your application. So if instead you want to build another layer one, it doesn't matter as long as we have the stuff that we need.
Right. So do you want to come up with your DeSci Alliance and come up with some priorities and we'll get people to build?
No, I think I understand what you're saying. I think that there is, as we've said, we're still at I don't even know if we're at infancy stage of DeSci. I think we're like at conception. Okay, and
that's a different metaphor. So.
Yeah. But I think that we're just so early, and the reality is there is so much pent up demand for what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Like when I worked in DeSci, you had to try, or DeFi, sorry, when I worked in DeFi, you had to try and come up with a product and then try and convince people that this was a solution to something that they needed, right? Like no one ever woke up one day and said, I need restaking. Like I wish I could restake what I've, no one ever thought of that, right? These are all just like finance, but there's no demand for that. Where the demand actually is for better health. It's for better science.
Pretty straightforward, isn't it?
Right? is to cure cancer. Is to cure Alzheimer's. Like, why aren't we as a society saying we need to get serious about solving these things? The reason why is because the institutions that are designed to protect us and to help us in those things have failed us. And so it's time for us to activate really. And so that's where I see this space, right? There is immense demand. It's not about circular versus somebody else or this versus somebody else or you're going to take my pie or no. This is about doing, and you've heard Gianluca say this over and over and over again, right? It's about doing the right thing. It's about raising the entire industry so that it can continue to grow and continue. That's the only way that it's going to be successful. Right. You can't come out with one flag right now. You have to be saying to everybody, this is the path forward. Right. Everybody has to join. Everybody has to participate.
That was the question. Then how does things like, the reason why you're here is this DeSci Alliance is that gathering place to talk about these issues and prioritize these issues.
That's it.
Right.
That's it.
Right. So we'll look in the content down in the notes, and we'll have a link to your Twitter feed.
Sure.
And we'll get people on there. We'll have this conversation next week, and we'll just keep it going.
Like I would say, if you're a founder, if you're a funder, or if you're a friend of DeSci, you should be joining us. Like you should join the alliance.
Yeah.
And it's not because you're going to get some great benefit or some great value. No, instead everyone gets value.
But get in
It raises
the
entire thing.
conversation is really what
Absolutely.
you're inviting people. So get in the conversation.
Absolutely.
Right. So go back though to you had an origin story here from Gianluca. Where was yours? You were talking a little bit about community and how that is in your DNA and how that community awareness, which is what you do, fits into the next few important steps for this industry. I'm talking about momentum, talking about business models and investment.
Yeah.
Where do you see your role in bringing these things together? What needs to happen really for the momentum to take off?
So I'm talking there are really today in DeSci, there are two types of projects. There are true science-based groups, whether they're entities, laboratories, individual scientists, but there's actual real science on one side who's trying to figure out how Web3 and how DeSci can help them fund the work that they're doing in order to raise it. They're running into funding issues. Now, especially over the last couple of weeks with the NIH changes that this administration is going to bring, with who knows what's going to happen with RFK, and there's a big shakeup happening in that. Right? So they're saying, how do we secure funding to continue to do what we're doing? Is DeSci a possible way to do it? The other side of that hand or token is, no pun intended, is that you have a lot of guys who are saying, we see DeSci as a real great pump opportunity, and they're coming up with tokens without any science.
Right.
Where I think
we should be aware of that, obviously.
Yeah, of course, yeah, and we don't want to encourage that, but where I think the opportunity is and where I see the alliance coming from is helping both sides of that, right? So you have guys who are great at raising funds who don't have any science, and you've got people who are great at science who don't have any funds, right? So it's a natural piece to say, let's connect these dots, right?
Sure.
Because
legitimize the financial side and build better health.
Yeah, I mean, because there is legitimacy to both on all sides, right? And I think that the alliance exists to say, like, okay, maybe you're a scientist, maybe you're a founder, or maybe you're a funder, right? And how do we bring those people together in a way that raises the entire space and makes as many projects as they possibly can be successful?
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
I think that's where this is ultimately going.
The word I was using was momentum, right? And sometimes I go back to 8,000 pharmacies. Momentum comes from really good use cases. Tell us about what's going on with the pharmacies and what are those use cases that you're going to be talking about, I don't know, in several months? Tell us a little bit about that.
No, this is something we should be announcing this week. So we are closing a deal to get 8,000 pharmacies in Italy integrated in the circular, and the idea is that these pharmacies have a corner where you can get tests, blood works, and all the other different testing. So, which is a very nice paradigm. Instead to go to the clinic, the hospital, you can just walk in a pharmacy and have these tests done. It's just much more sustainable. And because the data is collected now outside of a clinic, you want to guarantee that the data has a very good quality, that hasn't been, modified or anything. So we provide the service of certifying that data through the blockchain, and that's pretty much what we are.
So the several month thing was, when will you have a use case to say, this is how it was different, this is how it was applied? People didn't lose their jobs; they actually had better experiences. Is that deployed?
We are currently working on
we're
currently working on the integration, and as soon as the integration is a very trivial thing. So right now, we're just working together, but we had to do more identify a little bit more the requirements before starting coding and things like this, and we needed a signed agreement to move forward, but this is happening now.
Excellent.
And it will be available probably by the end of February.
Oh, that's faster than I
That's
thought.
pretty fast,
That's
yeah.
amazing. So those kinds of use cases are what get people behind something. They see a real use case. What are some of the real use cases that you're seeing that are getting people raising their eyebrows and saying this is something that can work versus theoretical? And
Great, good question. I think at the highest level you have the ability, like a use case is community funding around curing or collecting sort of rare data, right? So there's a lot of data sets that exist, or a lot of data sets that need to exist that are hard to collect. And traditional science has essentially failed as a mechanism to be able to do that. And so you need additional funding mechanisms to be able to bring those rare data sets together. Okay, so that's I think that's one.
Unbiased source of
Unbiased,
funding.
yes.
Of course, right.
Yes.
Without the intent, without the
Without an agenda.
Agenda. Thank you. Yes.
There's also there's also a use case that exists of creating a marketplace around unused science. So every scientist, as they're doing their work, is aggregating and collecting a ton of data. Right? Data is it's everything for them. So in all of their research, but what happens is you're only looking at a very specific set of data for your specific experiment or whatever the conclusion is, right? In the meantime, what happens to the other 90% of all that stuff, right? What I think a use case is here around blockchain and what we're talking about in DeSci is creating a marketplace for that additional data. Now that could come from a lab. It could come, in fact, there was a lab we were just talking to. He's an immunologist, and they have all of this data that they have that they don't have any real way to bring it to market. There's no real marketable way. Right? DeSci allows them, the blockchain allows them to be able to create immediately a marketplace.
Private, right? Unaffiliated data that's available for the market.
Can I give you another important use case? So I was discussing with a couple of folks about, how important it is to have like a patient record. And these people are from Africa. And we will meet these guys. And I was saying, that would be cool if you had like a patient record in these countries in Africa so that pharmaceutical companies cannot come there and test their protocols, but in a way that is not fair to people. Like, look at what happened in Kenya, And he said, the problem is that for geopolitical reasons, we cannot have a centralized record because they don't want us to. We try to do this more and more times and we can't. But at least each household has at least one cell phone. And said, fine, now let's create a decentralized health record.
Interesting.
So that people can also maintain and can eventually sell their data and be the one getting paid. I said, instead to pay the patient to learn about healthcare, et cetera, pay also the physician in collecting the data in their patient record. So each one has a record and has the interest to keep the record up to date. So the story is that people want these kind of things. They need these kind of things. And all you need to do is start spinning the flywheel.
Yeah. If I can build on that,
that's good.
That's obviously in a third world application, but there are many states today that there are laws in place that will not allow medical systems or healthcare systems to release to you, the individual, your own health records. It's illegal in several states in the United States. You cannot go and request medical records. Just think about this though. You go to a chiropractor, you go to a dentist, you go to your medical doctor, you go to a specialist, right? None of them have the same records. And don't you hate how every time you go to the doctor, you answer the same 12 questions over and over and over again?
And they take the same tests and
they may, and I get like frequency and I get you've got to update those things and blah, blah, blah. But like my chiropractor has no idea what my dentist is doing or what this one's doing or what this one's doing, but all of those things affect my health. Why isn't there a central place where I can come in, right, and be able to say, here's all of my medical records, here's everything that's been up to date. Oh, by the way, here are the supplements that I take. Here's an update on, all the most recent testings, and my genomics are in place. And we should have an AI that just basically like packages all of that stuff together, right? And says, okay, here's what it is. So that every doctor I go to, before they walk in the room with me, they don't need to spend 30 minutes with me asking me all these questions. Instead, they should be able to say, hey, we already understand and know who this profile is, know who the person is, and here's some personalized recommendations. Yeah. That's the thing that's missing in medicine today is personalization. Everything is general. Everything is generalized. And that's both liability, but it's also like, just at a matter of practice. Every recommendation you get is a generalized recommendation based upon this is what I've seen, this is what we're hearing, this is what the latest reports say, so this is what we're going to give to you.
Right. Odds are, send you to this
That's what it
specialist.
is. You fall in this bucket, so we're going to give you this, we're going to give you this. And many people fall in buckets that don't actually relate to the outcome, right? And this is where I
And
think
guess who makes
this is
the
going.
buckets? Is the one that sells the drugs.
Yeah. You have to keep going back to the doctor, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if your mechanic operated the way your doctor did, you wouldn't be using that mechanic, right? Because they're just guessing. And a lot of times that's what we see in medicine and science today. It's just people are forced into that. So anyways, I think there's a ton of use cases. And we should do a show at some point on just use cases of DeSci, because I think there's a ton, and it's an important conversation. But I think those are some things to chew on for sure.
Anyway, people like Andrew are very important in the space because what they do is educate. And that's why he's here today. That's why we are happy to have him and have this conversation with him.
Yeah. So come back.
Okay, I'll come back.
Come back and hang out around the block. Should we take it to some details? Are we done? Do
No,
you
I think we...
Yeah. This is
Great,
great.
right?
This is great. All right, so look in the notes. We're going to put some links in there for people to get more involved. I'm David Cutler, thanking Gianluca and Andrew for taking a walk around the block with us in Circular Protocol. So thank you very much. Nice to see you all. Come back.